So Hillary Clinton signs on the dotted line that she has indeed turned over all of her State Department related emails. Some of U.S. cities are being corroded and collapsing due to urine. Gerald Celente predicts a U.S. stock market crash by the end of 2015. And has the Fed admitted that they're not going to raise rates before the election? And did a meteor just hit Iran? How you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com, and as usual, there has been a host of crazy, interesting news stories that have come out in the past few days, past week or so, and most of them are not good for the state of the global financial system, for the country, for anything. Some of them are just interesting, but all of them are worth knowing about, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. So this first story is actually about how our country is just disintegrating from first world status probably to second world status over the next few decades, hopefully not sooner than that. But the story is from San Francisco, where a light pole collapsed because it had been corroded with urine. And I've actually read other stories about other major cities that were having trouble dealing with the stench and just the health issues related to increased homelessness and just increased degeneracy in general, people pissing in the streets and stuff like that. So this is definitely not a good news for the state of the country. We're seeing shanty towns and just like hobo villages outside a lot of major cities to deal with the increased homelessness because of the loss of jobs. So we're probably going to see a steady decline like this as things continue to get worse in our financial collapse until it gets to a point where something breaks, and or it may just stay stagnant at a really bad like second world type level for many years. And I've said this to people, like, this is not going to be a Mad Max scenario. This is just where you're going to see America go from a country that's basically the greatest standard of living that the world has probably ever seen in the history of humanity to a place where when you don't have enough money to buy food, you may actually starve to death. And just like we see in countries all over the world, that may be a reality here in the US, and we're starting to see that with the increased homelessness, which is causing light poles to collapse because they're soaked with urine. So Zero Hedge is reporting that the Federal Reserve has basically admitted that the apolitical Fed has basically admitted that they don't want to do anything that would affect voting patterns of before this upcoming election. So they don't want to raise the rates or whatever because it might have impacts on the election. So this is definitely an interesting statement from what's supposed to be an apolitical organization. Obviously, it's not surprising to probably many people who are watching this channel, but it is interesting to see them basically come out and admit it. You can check the links for the story and all the rest on RuleTheWasteland.com. Trends forecaster Gerald Celente has added his name to the list of a large number of expert voices that are calling for a very imminent collapse in the U.S. Stock market. He's predicting by the end of 2015, and Economic Collapse blog has reported that has all the details there. Links are at RuleTheWasteland.com. I don't like making predictions on dates, but it is interesting to see that there's this many people that are thinking that this is going to happen within the next 6 to 8 months, so it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for. So the New York Times has an article about how alternative paper currencies are starting to gain traction, particularly in the UK. Now, it's not something you see quite as often here in the US because the government has been very, very strict on anything that it would view as a competing currency. We've seen that guy recently get arrested for having a silver, what they called a competing currency or counterfeiting, because it was supposed to be some sort of money, and they really don't want you to do that, which is absurd, and it's going to happen eventually anyway. They're just going to drive it underground into a black market type situation. We've already seen situations before where it's been reported that people are using items like laundry detergent and Tide as sort of a currency or a store of value for narcotics transactions and buying and selling drugs and things like that. So there's no way they can really prevent a black market economy. But it's interesting to see how strongly they go after any sort of competing currency. This apparently isn't as much of an issue in the UK, and this article details how there's a lot of local paper currencies that even in this age of the internet and technology, that paper physical currency is regaining ground, and specifically local kind of artisanal currencies are being used in a lot of places. Maybe they're only good at a few shops or in a local community or whatever, but people are starting to lose trust with the government sanctioned money and are switching to other methods of storing wealth and making transactions and economic transactions. So for the weirdest story that I've seen in a while, Multiple news sources around the world are reporting that Iran has been struck by a big meteor that had a devastating impact on this. I've yet to see what would normally be called a legit or legacy news agency pick this up, and so I have no idea if this is completely fabricated. It's certainly possible that there was some sort of explosion there. It could be an attack by Israel, could be some sort of Iran nuclear facility having some sort of a meltdown or a catastrophe there, and they're trying to cover it up. But it's definitely a weird situation to see multiple people reporting that Iran has been struck by a meteor, and keep an eye on the story to see where it goes. But I would not at all be surprised to hear that it's completely fake. But it's still weird to see this story popping up out of nowhere, so we'll see what happens and keep an eye on that. As usual, all the links to these articles will be at rulethewasteland.com, so check it out. Stay tuned for more economics and just geopolitical news, and I'll talk to you guys later.